So if you've gone through the first 4 or 5 episodes, you'll note that we've kind of done this part here, right? We have a tournament devoid of these attributes here, but like we have a tournament and we have a group and we have teams and matches, and we've kind of crunched uh, those numbers in a hard-coded fashion, and we've gotten results and they show on the screen, right? The other aspect of this is that we actually need to take the rules for a given sport, right? The rules for that sports tournament, right? And there'll be defaults, but they'll be adjustable as well by the end user. And we need to allow that user to take these rules, assign values to them, order them, organize them in the way they want, and then apply them to their tournament, so that when we calculate those results, this it will follow the rules with the dynamicism of their choices, right? So this is sort of the entity diagram. So just to sum up again, we've done this piece kind of, and now we're kind of focused into this piece. So it's kind of separate. So we're going to jump away from the groups component page and kind of start building a WYSIWYG drag and drop rules kind of screen that we can save and apply to their current tournament. I'm going to open up this next Mermaid doc. So this just shows you that we're adding a new entity called sport, right? Because the sport is going to, we could have created, this is one of those architectural decisions where you can make things as abstract as you want them to be and invest as much time in abstraction as you want. What I've determined is that abstract is cool, but for the most part, each individual sport's going to have its own real set of rules that for the most part 80% of those rules will probably remain the same, and there might be some slight differences between the two. So I'm cool with having a sport that has a set of default rule definitions that you can alter or change to some level on your own. So it decreases the complexity down a little bit. There's still a lot of work to do here because there's still things that can be very complicated, but nevertheless, we have this sport entity, and it's going to have all these rules applied. And here are some of the examples of the rules. Like you've seen this ad nauseum. I know points for a win, draw, all this stuff, right? And so we should be able to, plug these in and have them run and execute correctly. So also, the outcome of this that we haven't discussed a ton is the qualifying teams that emerge from this. The important thing about is we've got to use this rules engine to determine the standings, and then we apply which teams qualify. In some tournaments, only the top team may qualify from a group. In some tournaments, the top 2 teams. Like in the World Cup, it's more complicated than that because it's the top 2 teams plus the 8 out of the 12 best third place teams qualify. So it's a little more complicated than that. And this in here will probably constitute an episode or 2 on its own, because there is some complication there about in terms of planning and thinking about how to handle that. So we're going to have a rules screen, and in that rules screen, we're going to have the 2 tournament rules listed. And this is a configuration screen for a tournament. And we can enable or disable a rule, so it may not be applied at all. We're going to have input values for some of the rules depending upon what type of rule they are. And then, again, the user will define the priority. They'll be able to drag and drop. The topmost will be the first thing it looks at in terms of tie breaking and determining who's at the top of the standings, and then the second, third, and so forth and so on. And again, this applies to the tournament itself. So again, just another review here. So we have the completed matches done. So we've kind of been on this side. We kind of had the raw statistics calculated, and this kind of shows you kind of a little bit of the shape of what the code will look like. Kind of if you want to think about utilities or the way I'm thinking about this. And so we'll have this, but in unison we have these sets of rules. And so we're at this point. We've kind of done this. Now we need to build out this, bring these 2 together, bring the raw stats or actually not the raw stats that we've crunched into these numbers, bring those crunched numbers in here, the rules, and then determine the standings, then calculate the rule-based points and apply adjustments, and all essentially these are the rules that we would apply against them, and then assign the positions, which is very important, obviously 1, 2, 3, 4, and then qualification will be determined purely off of either those standings, or if we have to get into it like in the World Cup for third place, you have to actually look and compare third place teams, which should be interesting. That should be an interesting challenge. And I haven't even thought through completely how I'd want to do that yet. But yeah, that'll be a fun challenge. And then the final standings. And then after that, we can either jump into like the configuration screens of signing up and building this stuff, or we can jump straight into bracketing and assigning the qualified teams to their prospective spots that they're supposed to be in. I'll kind of leave that up to everyone here. If anyone leaves comments, I can adjust which path we go on based on what you would prefer to do first. So with that, I think this is the time that we can actually step into building out some of the types, the new types that we're going to need. And we'll do that next. Oh, and welcome back. So I've navigated to my types folder and gone into my types file here, and we're going to be adding on a good number of entities. But first things first, we're actually going to be changing one again because it doesn't make sense to name it this. I named this particular interface that held all the stats for a team. This is like a team line item with all the calculations done. I named it team standing. Well, at this point, that doesn't make sense because the standings are going to be determined by an algorithm or function or set of functions that pulls in rules, like I mentioned, and sets the qualifications and orders the teams for that particular group. So what I've decided to name this is actually very soccer specific. So I'm going to name it Soccer Team Stats, and that actually makes more sense here, right? Because these are going to be specific. Some of these are going to be specific to soccer, right? But I'm also going to recognize the fact that as we have other sports, we sort of need a baseline interface, which will be base team stats, right? So in any sporting event, we're always going to have teams that win. And I'm actually going to name these out now. I don't know why I don't know why you all let me name these things with one letter like this. Someone who comes into the future may not know what the heck that means. So I don't know why I did that, and I don't know why you all didn't tell me to change it. So we'll take equal responsibility for that. But so win, loss, and draws are specific to soccer or other sports. So I'm not going to actually include that in here. Goals for, goals against, goal differential, and points are all soccer specific. The other thing here is played. See, so we can put here played games. That actually makes more sense. Number, right? And then what we're going to have this do is extend the base team stats that we just started. So now with the base team stats with actually wins and losses, plural, played. I don't know what I'm. Those were all singular. We can get rid of, so played games, wins and losses goes away here. And like I mentioned, because every sporting event is going to have wins and losses and played games, right? Regardless of what sport you're in, you're always going to have wins or losses or played games. But these things are actually specific to a soccer. Sorry. So goals for, let's just do this real quick. And this is going to make some other screens or other components cry a little bit. Goals allowed. Took me a second. And then goal diff. And then points. So we'll just spell these out. So now we have this redone. So now this can be reused by multiple sports, and this is specific to soccer. Good. Let's see. there's probably, I'm surprised we don't have some classes or components in here that are already wailing over this. So let's be extending this. So we're going to have, yeah, they are. Oh, hang on. I got a phone call. Okay, sorry about that. I had a phone call. Not that it affected your time at all. So obviously here we're going to have the soccer team stats coming in instead. And that's going to make this upset because all these names I changed here. What now I call it played games. Wins. Not wins. Wins. Losses. Draws. Goals. For. Goals allowed. Goal diff. And again, on these things, when I'm doing these types of things, if you guys, of course, you're welcome to fast forward when I'm doing these types of things, so you don't have to watch me do this stuff. So yeah, I love it. It's a good feeling when all that red goes away. Cool. So now that's cleaned up, and now we have a couple more little guys here. Goals for. We'll copy and paste these, and we're just cleaning up a little bit. I told you in I think the first and second videos that I would have problems naming things and going back and renaming them or rethinking through. And unfortunately, that has come to fruition. So goals all of 4 and goals allowed. I normally in future videos won't do this. This is kind of a smaller kind of refactor, so I normally won't be suffering you all through this. I'll just kind of like, what did I have left? Points. Oh, for God's sakes, I'll just type it out. I won't suffer you all this, though. I know it's a pain in the neck. Okay. So we've gotten this file back to clean again. I'm thinking that I don't have any other. That's obviously definitely not going to be a place. Use groups itself. Probably in the teams. Where am I? Oh, here. I was blind there. I couldn't see this. Teams is probably going to have some. Yeah, here we go. Soccer team stats. Oops. Soccer team stats. And we're going to change that to this. And this will, of course. God, I'm going to pause it and just do this, and then I'll come back to you. I'm not going to waste any more of your time on this. So, yes, I managed to change all of these standings fields here, you can see. And I also managed to change my shirt too, and mow the lawn in that time. So, pretty impressive for 2 seconds, right? So this is all up to date now. And I'm going to go back here to the types because I made one other change to this, which is I just dropped the team ID and the group ID into here because it makes sense. Anytime you're dealing with any sport, you're going to have a team and a group for my site anyway, and then played games, wins and losses. The rest of this stuff is specific to soccer potentially. Okay, so now that we've done this, we need to update the calc standings util because we need to be able to pass in dynamically a couple of rules that come from the future rule configuration engine that we'll build. So in this case, we had a couple of functions in here that actually do the calculation, and we have, as I mentioned before, these calculated. So what we need to do is change that. The first thing, excuse me, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create an interface that's called soccer stats config. Again, as always, I reserve the right to change anything. You know the rules, right? So points for a win is the first one, right? And that's going to be a number. And again, this is just going to be an interface that we use to pass our data around in, so it's consistent. We know what we're dealing with. Points for a draw would be a number, and then we're going to actually do points for a loss. And the only reason why I'm doing that, like I've rarely seen this. I have seen some soccer tournaments before where they do a points for a loss at -1. So they view losses as much worse. So I'll leave it there just as an option. But as you're going to see, the way we're going to put this in is you're not going to have to fill that out if you don't need to. Like, so I'll show you how in a second. And then probably goal differential cap, right? So we're going to have a cap on in a game. Again, if there are if there's an 8-goal win, we might have a cap that's only at 5, so the team can only get credit for up to 5, and this keeps competitiveness going during when you're determining whether a team goes through or not on a particular tiebreaker or what have you. So then obviously, one other thing. I was going to show you first here that I'm obviously going to pass in a soccer config, and it's going to be of type soccer stats config, right? Obvious. But what I also want to do is I want to create a object that is, or not that, const, and I'm going to create a default soccer config, and it's going to be of type what I just created, right? And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say that, here, let's just copy these to save a little time. We're going to copy these down, right? And we're going to say the win is a 3, like normal, because that's mostly what, oops, I forgot to put an equals here, right? Because this is an object. This is not a type. This is an object of type. So here we go. So we have 3 here, 1, and then default for losses is usually 0. And then the goal cap, a lot of them don't have them. I'll set it for now at 5, okay? And so we have a default default cap. And we're also going to do so that you're not forced to fill every one of these out when you pass in. We're going to make this input a partial. And what that does is it says you can only pass these guys in, but you don't have to pass all of them. So in other words, if I just configure this guy here to change to 2, I could just pass in points for win, and it's not going to get upset at me for not passing in for draw, loss, cap, etc. Make sense? Okay, so now we have the interface, we have a default, and we have the input to where we can push the config in. Now I'm going to do something a little clever here, which is, so we don't have to tell this app or whatever the caller is of this function. So we don't have to tell them that they're passing this in. Like, well, let me restate that. So that they don't have, if they just want the defaults, they don't have to pass this in. Totally. What we're going to do is we're going to say const, and we'll call it rules, and we'll say equals this. And what we'll do is we'll do a spread of default, right, first, and then a spread of the soccer config. And what's cool about this, what this is going to do, and this should be rules plural. What's cool about this is what this is going to do is essentially say, okay, first write all the default values in, and then if you have any soccer config values passed in, overwrite those. So now we have all the defaults automatically set up, and we're not counting on the developer to ensure he passes the correct values in, or we're not getting lost in the mix here with what these values are. So that's good. So now we have that, and then the only thing that has to change in this particular function is that we're going to pass those rules obviously into applying them, right? So for the home and away teams, we're going to go rules, right? Pass those in, and obviously it's going to be upset at me because I don't have the rules down here. So rules, soccer, we know the soccer stats config. Good. So now we have um, this entire component has, or this entire file has, which has a couple of functions, and it's all wired up and clean right now, except for the fact that we have to implement these rules here. And what I realized here was I had created a couple of bugs right here without realizing it. This actually should be um, played games. And look at this. I'm just setting the value instead of doing plus equals on the goals for and goals against. So that's a bug too. So I just had to clean that up just a little bit. Now we're going to move on to fixing and adding these rules into this area here, so we get the correct values out. Okay, guys, I actually had to stop this and think about this for a second. I'm not as brilliant as I look, and so stuff like this, I had to stop and actually think about this for a second, and I'll explain it. So, essentially, what we need to do when we're determining what the goals differential is if we have a cap. So the first thing we need to do is actually we're going to calculate goals for and goals against. So if you win 5-3, this will be 2. If you lose 5-3, this will be -2. For the scenarios that we're going to be looking at here, let's look at, let's say there was an 8-0 match. So goals for 8, goals against 0. This results in 8. What we're going to do then is we're going to say, okay, we need to find out if the rules config involves a goal diff cap. If it does not, then just take the 8 that we calculated up here and use it, right? Makes sense? 8-0 plus 8. If you lost, you're -8. So that's what this would be here. So that works out fine. The complicated part is here. And this is what I had to stop for because I didn't want you sitting here seeing my eyes roll into the back of my head while I figured this out. But essentially what we need to do to determine the max is, the complication is that you have to take, if you won 8-0, you have to take the min between the 8 and whatever the goal differential is, right? If it's lower, right? So if it's 5, we're going to want the min of 8 and 5. If we're on the other end, they're on the losing end of this. So we're -8, right? And the goal diff is -5. We only want to punish them to -5. So you want to actually take the max of that, right? So instead of -8, you're only getting pushed down to -5. So that's essentially what this does here. It takes this. So the cap is 5. So it says, you won. We'll go with the positive here. You won 8-0. Okay, we're going to get the min. That's 5. So that puts that, you can imagine a 5 being here. And then the goal diff cap is 5, but it's minus here. Then we want the max of that. So the goal diff turns into 5. So I won't go through the negative, but essentially this works successfully. And again, you can get it in my Git repo if you want to pull this or whatever. But yeah. So then after that, we have a running total here. That brings me to another change actually I want to make, but related to naming. But all we do is we take this, since we're doing a running total, we take the value that we just got from this, which is either the goal differential or the calculated goal differential based on the cap, and we apply it here, and that's it. Then all we have to do, the remainder of this is just the simple ones, right? So look, we have 3 points hard coded. We want rules dot points for win here. We want rules dot points for draw, right? Draw here. And then we're going to want, else it's a loss. So we're going to want, did we? So, okay, we already increased. Okay, so standing dot points plus equals rules dot points for loss. Right. Oops. There we go. And that should be what we need to do for this class as far as it working. So I'm going to save that. One quick thing, this is a little confusing to me calling it standing in here, because this holds the running totals for everything, and it's a line item for the team. It's at the team level in this tournament. So I'm going to change this to running totals. All right. So, because that kind of makes sense. We're running through them. It kind of differentiates them from matches, which are one little data input. So I'm just going to change this to running totals. So that makes sense a little bit better. And um, since we're passing this in up here, so running totals is essentially home and away here, right? And we're getting it from what's called standings here. I'm going to change that to running totals as well, just to keep it consistent. Running totals, running totals, running totals. Oh, and since we're now calculating this in here, this can go away, I believe. We don't need the goal differential done in here anymore. So, and then this returns obviously running total since we changed the name of it. Do that, and then this should be fine. All right, so one last thing. Let's test this out. I don't know all the stats offhand. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up this window and see what we've got. Okay. I don't know if these stats are exactly right by memory. I don't remember exactly. So goal differential here is this. Let's do something weird, like make the goal differential 1, which would mean every team that gets a win can have a max of +1 in the goal differential, and every team that loses can have a max of +2. So let's save this and come back in here, and let's see. So this looks pretty good because Mexico was 3-0, and they have a goal differential of 3 because that's the max they can have. Mixed results are going to favor, so 1 win +1 -2 -1, right? 0 wins and 2 losses should be -2, right? And then we have a win and a loss and a draw, so that's all even. It should be 0. So this looks correct. It looks like it's affecting the goal differential properly, even though we've put in a number that actually wouldn't be realistic. And again, I am so disappointed again because I have pushed this to a 30-minute video. I don't know what it is about coding. Even I try to segment off stuff, and it still comes in at 30 minutes. I'm going to keep trying really hard to reduce these down. I would love to end in the high teens, maybe 20 minutes. I'm not trying to keep you here for this long, but yeah. So we now have the standings done. And I was going to show you a new entity diagram here, but this video has gone too long. So I'll show you at the beginning of episode. This is 6, so episode 7. I'll see you there. And if you're following along still with me, I really appreciate you. And again, please provide any feedback you have. If there's something I need to improve, if there's something you do like, let me know. I'm brand new at this, so I say too much still. Another fault, but as I just did it again. Almost did it again. Any feedback is appreciated. Just try to keep it constructive. That's all. Even if it's negative, keep it constructive. Appreciate it. And I will see you in the next video.